The dusty air of the sparring arena clung to Ryu's skin. His amber eyes, sharp as the edge of his katana, were glued to the figure across from him, Akihiko. The raven-haired Omega, his perpetual rival and an unyielding thorn in his side, stood poised with calm determination, his fists wrapped and steady as he prepared for their latest showdown. No taunts this time, no smirking jabs or scathing remarks, just silence, weighted by years of enmity. Ryu's chest heaved, frustration bubbling under his ribs. "What's the matter, Akihiko? Losing your nerve?" Akihiko's violet eyes, always so cool and disdainful, flicked up to lock on Ryu's. There it was again, that maddening unreadability, that calm exterior that made Ryu want to tear through every inch of his composure just to see something real. "You're the one who's too predictable," Akihiko replied smoothly, his voice low enough to skate under Ryu's skin. "Always leading with anger. No wonder you can't land a hit." Ryu lunged without thinking. A crack of energy surged between them as their movements blurred into a dazzling exchange of strikes. The crowd watching their match cheered, but their voices faded into the background. Only Akihiko's steady rhythm and Ryu's own mounting frustration filled the air between them. And as they clashed again and again, Ryu couldn't deny it anymore. His anger wasn't just fury, it was fear. A fear he couldn't quite name, but always felt gnawing at him when Akihiko got near. Months later, their positions had changed entirely. No sparring rings, no warfare between their clans, no carefully calculated insurgencies to test one another's strength. The truce forged between the house of Ryu's alphas and Akihiko's omegas had shifted their lives in ways neither of them had been prepared for. "I didn't choose this either," Akihiko muttered, folding his arms as he leaned against the doorframe of the guest quarters Ryu had been forced to assign to him. "But your council thinks dumping me here as your what? Ward is going to keep the peace. So just don't bother me while I figure out what to do next." Ryu wanted to snap back, maybe make some smarmy remark about Akuma's being easier to deal with than Akihiko's arrogance. But with the moonlight slanting through the window behind the slim silhouette of his rival, he found himself hesitating. Akihiko looked, not vulnerable, never that, but tired. For reasons Ryo didn't entirely understand, his chest ached at the sight. With the moonlight slanting through the window behind the slim silhouette of his rival, Ryu found himself hesitating. Akihiko looked, not vulnerable, never that, but tired. The usual sharpness of his retorts was replaced by a quiet defensiveness, like he was exhausted of fighting battles no one else could see. For reasons Ryu didn't entirely understand, his chest ached at the sight. "Fine," Ryu relented after a moment, turning toward the hallway. "But there's dinner in the main hall. You don't have to come, but you'll regret it if you don't." Akihiko glanced up at that, his brow quirking just barely enough to show interest. But when he stepped away from the doorway to close the door behind him with a quiet click, Ryu caught the faintest glimpse of a smirk pulling at his lip. Weeks turned into months. Somehow, without meaning to, they began to slip into old patterns, but softer ones. The sparring wasn't as vicious now. Instead, it had become a way for them to push at each other's edges. At night, when meetings dragged on or the house quieted, Ryu would find Akihiko bent over the balcony railing, gazing at the stars. They weren't Splice Clan warriors in those moments, weren't bound by history or rivalries, just two men sharing the same sky. And slowly, Ryu began to see Akihiko differently. It wasn't just his sharp tongue or his unshakable pride. It was the way he smiled when he thought no one was watching, the quiet kindness in the way he stopped to straighten a child's hair in the village. It was his bravery, his unflinching determination, even after the world had taken so much from him. Akihiko hid so much of himself from the world, but what Ryu could see was beautiful. It terrified him to realize he wanted more. "I don't know why I trust you," Akihiko said one winter morning, his breath clouding in front of him as he and Ryu stood on the training grounds. Snow blanketed the estate, but neither of them seemed inclined to go inside just yet. Ryu tilted his head, his amber eyes fixed on him. "Maybe because you know I'd protect you," he said simply, evenly, as though the admission held no weight at all. Akihiko froze for a moment, blinking at him. Then his lips twitched upward, that crooked, exasperating smirk returning. "Protect me? That's rich, coming from the alpha who couldn't land a hit on me most of the time. Ryu chuckled, the sound rumbling low in his chest. You've been keeping score? Habit, Akihiko replied smoothly, though a faint pinkness touched his cheeks, chased away by the cold. Ryu took a step closer, then another, until Akihiko could surely feel the warmth radiating off him, even through the chilled air. It doesn't matter who can land a hit, Ryu murmured. To his own surprise, Akihiko didn't pull away. What matters is that I care about what happens to you. The years after their bond was forged passed in waves of calm and excitement. When Akihiko gave birth to their twins, two precocious boys with Ryu's golden eyes and Akihiko's raven black hair, everything changed again. The boys, Hikari and Yuto, were a storm in human form. From the moment they could crawl, they were everywhere at once, testing their father's patience at every turn. Hikari had Akihiko's sharpness, his wit and fondness for teasing his brother. Yuto, meanwhile, carried pieces of Ryu's quiet tenderness. When he fixed his wide eyes on Ryu's face, biting his lip as he offered up a crumpled leaf he'd found in the garden, something he clearly deemed a treasure, Ryu thought his heart might burst. Papa says you're not supposed to wear your boots inside. Yuto piped up one afternoon, tugging at his father's pants leg, while Akihiko stood holding a tray of tea in the doorway. Ryu, caught mid-step with mud staining the soles of his boots, sighed and bent down, scooping up Yuto into his arms. Does he? He asked, raising a brow and directing the question at Akihiko, who responded with the long-suffering sigh of someone who knew the battle was lost the moment a toddler got involved. Yes, he does, and you do well to listen, Akihiko said dryly, though his smirk betrayed his fondness. Hikari soon bounded into the room as well, flourishing a mismatched wooden sword and shield. Fight me, Papa Ryu, he cried, puffing out his chest like a tiny warrior. Ryu set Yuto onto the ground and crouched, holding up his hands. You think you're ready to take me on, little dragon? Ready as I'll ever be, Hikari declared boldly, even as his form and footing were laughably wrong. As the mock battle played out, with Akihiko watching from the side and laughing when Ryu exaggerated his defeat to make Hikari believe he'd won, Ryu couldn't help but take it all in. It wasn't the life he'd imagined when their rivalry defined their days, but it was everything he needed. Later that night, when their children were finally asleep and the gentle hum of cicadas filled the warm summer air, Ryu pulled Akihiko close beneath the covers of their shared bed. They were no longer enemies clawing at each other's throats, but partners, building something together that they were determined to protect. Akihiko rested his head against Ryu's chest, breathing softly in rhythm with him. I used to think you'd be my downfall, Akihiko confessed, his words barely above a whisper. Ryu's hands slid to cradle the back of his head, his fingers tracing through his hair. And now? Akihiko didn't answer for a moment, but when he tilted his face upward, staring into Ryu's soft gaze, the small, rare smile that blossomed on his lips said more than any words could. You're my everything.